Good Friday, everyone. Welcome to the Blue Water Climate Control Volquest.com podcast, the mailbag edition. Glad to have you along with us with Austin Price, Jesse Simonton, Rob Lewis. I'm Brent Hubbs. Glad that you're doing well. Hope everybody has a great 4th of July weekend. Be safe wherever you are and be cautious in everything that you do. But we'll get right into the mailbag questions here. We'll start with Braves Vol, and he wants to know, Austin, probably not a lot of recruiting news, but if you have any kind of updates on prospects that are closer to a decision, like TID, Page, and Munden. Let's start with Munden with an unusual tweet that he had yesterday about just, hold on, something's coming sometime, but maybe not as quick as he had initially thought. Where do you think things stand with the ever-evasive Smile Munden? Do you think anybody has a real feel for where they are with that one?
No. I think he likes it that way too. I talked to him on the phone yesterday for a brief minute, and we just kind of exchanged some kind of thoughts on the kind of the secrecy of his deal. And I told him I kind of respected it. There's so much of today's recruiting is known days and weeks in advance that I as much as I'd love to know what he's going to do, I kind of like the idea that he holds all the cards and nobody else has got those cards, including the coaches. I think Tennessee's is positioned as well as they can be right there. For what it is, with all the misdirection, all the kind of the speculation. I think Tennessee's is positioned as well as they can be. I think honestly, and I may be on the outside on this, and maybe I'm not. I don't know. I told you this, Brent. I'm more one of you or Jesse. I think that this is Tennessee or Auburn. I think Georgia may be running 3 here. I don't know why. I just got this weird feeling that when he picks, it's either going to be Tennessee or Auburn. I don't know why I feel that way. I just feel like, if it was the home state Bulldogs, it'd potentially already be done.
Well, let me ask you this. You think he's definitely going to do something in July?
I think there's still a good shot at it. I know what he put out last night on Twitter, but, haven't talked to him. I think that he still would prefer to get it done. But then again, he preferred to get it done in June, and then it got pushed back to July. So who's to say it's not going to get pushed back again?
All right, let's talk
you're
about
– You're saying it has a good Owen Papo feel to it.
Oh, no. Hey, well, however you want to read it. The point is, I don't know. It doesn't feel like Georgia to me. I thought it was Georgia a month and a half ago because I just felt like Kirby knows how important he is. But since then, having talked to some people down there in the school and just kind of, some of the behavior and stuff, not that it's bad behavior, it's just more cloak and dagger and more guarded to the people that he's close to. It feels like he's really going to pull a rabbit out of the hat here.
And we know he's close with T. Will at Auburn for sure.
Yes.
And Brian,
I think he's close with Niedermeyer and T. Will. That to me is his best 2 relationships, in my opinion.
I remembered Austin when we were down there and visited with him. I know there were some people that weren't mad, but were a little bit surprised Georgia wasn't in the school in January as much as Auburn, Tennessee, Florida, and some other schools were. Now, that may just be, crazy coincidence. The guy recruiting that area had to be somewhere else because Georgia was trying to finish on somebody or whatever. But it was made known that Georgia wasn't there every week in January, and they were one of the few schools that didn't come by every week in January.
Well, but in reality, though, and you know this, Brent, you've done this for 25 years, is it not always the home state school that kind of gets pegged in those deals? I mean, how many times have you heard a Tennessee high school coach say Tennessee's not been by as much as the others?
Yeah,
that almost happens inevitably with whoever the home state school is because they want it out there because they want. Most of those guys are fans of those schools. So they want Jeremy Pruitt to come by if you're a Tennessee high school coach, or they want Kirby Smart and those guys to come by if you're a Georgia high school coach.
Yeah.
They want that. They want that interaction.
All right, let's get to Peyton Page. Anything new there? North Carolina's got all this momentum. They get the Grimes kid. There's all this North Carolina talk. North Carolina moving up there, or do you think that this feels more like Clemson, Tennessee? North Carolina's running maybe third on this deal with he says a July announcement or July commitment coming.
I feel like that Clemson's got the momentum. I do think that the more that those North Carolina guys lay on him, though, I mean, it does have an effect. But his dad played at North Carolina A&T. he's been through football recruiting before, even if it's a smaller level. So I think the dad can help him with this. He's got enough people around him. He's got a veteran high school coach who, while may not be super involved in his recruitment, can be a source of, somebody to kind of lean on in those type of things, and that just ask opinions too. So it just feels like Clemson to me. Tennessee's definitely still swinging there, but I don't want to discount North Carolina or Tennessee, but if I was going to pick a school, it would be Clemson at this point.
And I don't think there's anything new on TID in terms of moving towards. He doesn't have a real timetable. I think he wants to take
those people that were guessing yesterday at the tweet or 2 days ago at the tweet, by the UT staffer. It's not Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. I think what he's saying is it's about time to drop his top 4 or whatever he's going to drop.
Right.
He was pretty adamant with us. He's going to take his time. He's going to take his official visits in the fall. I don't think he's in any rush because I think he knows he's a take no matter where, whenever he wants to pull the trigger.
Well, go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say, whether you're talking about Ingram Dawkins or Page or any of these kids, don't you think the fall or just whenever this eternal dead period ends, it's just going to be the wild, wild west? With kids taking visits and changing their minds on the commitment they made, without being able to take visits in the spring even.
I think it will be for some. I also think that if you don't do anything by late July, at what point does it just not behoove you just to wait? Like, what's the point in doing it in August? I mean, like, why not just wait until they open things back up? Providing it does open back up and go see some places. I don't see the point in jumping in August. It's like almost like, why is William Parker going to wait till September 1st or 3rd or whatever it is and announce, for somebody. But I mean, like, it almost seems like he already knows what he's doing. He's just waiting to wait.
Well, yeah, maybe a lot of guys want to do it right before they play their first high school game. You know how that is.
Well, here's the other thing too, Jesse, that and we got a couple of questions about the season and how that may or may not go this fall, spring, whatever. We'll get into that in the mailbag in just a minute. But if there is continued uncertainty in the fall and fall football becomes less and less of reality, which it certainly this week has felt like less of a reality, what does the NCAA do with recruiting and with signing day? Do they eliminate the December signing day and everything's dead in the fall and you can't take –
and just say if you want to enroll early, you enroll early?
I don't know. I mean, what is going – because that's the one thing – I mean, the focus is on getting competition on the field. But there's a byproduct to this at some point has to be talked about is what are you going to do with the recruiting cycle? The calendar is obviously not a calendar at this point. It's just been tore up. How do you adjust the calendar? What comes of it moving forward? I think now's not the time to answer that question, but I think that question is going to come to the forefront come mid-August heading into September 1 when this thing may remain dead.
Yeah, I mean, if kids aren't allowed to take visits in the fall, I mean, how much sense does it make to have an early signing period? I mean, I guess you could just leave it there, and if you want to sign, like AP said, just go ahead. I mean, I don't think they could theoretically prevent kids who are on pace to graduate early from going ahead and just showing up and going to class where they want to and being on scholarship. But yeah, I mean, if you're not able to take official visits from going back, from when a bunch of guys were taking them, for spring games, and we've seen that. He basically tore up 9 months that would have been where you could have taken an official visit and rendered that, moot. So how can you not alter the calendar? I almost wonder if you don't push back the February date with the way things are now.
Well, I think it's going to be leading into some of those other questions. I think they're going to try to figure out the season calendar first.
Sure.
Within the conferences or within each other, and then the NCAA is going to kind of come over as the umbrella and say, all right, this is what we're going to do recruiting. So it's almost like that whole calendar has just been paused until, we figure out what happens in the fall, which seems to be like this roller coaster every week, whether there's optimism or now kind of, growing pessimism with stuff like even the governor of South Carolina, just putting it out on Thursday that he's not sure about sporting events taking place there. Tennessee obviously plays Furman in Tennessee, but then they're supposed to go to South Carolina, in the middle of October. So it's it's right now. It's an uneasy feeling around college football, especially when you kind of talk to some folks about it.
Yeah,
I could see a scenario where they play football in some form, college football in some form, and still have the dead period in place. Not wanting kids to travel. I wouldn't rule that out.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Jesse, you're right. I mean, the priority is figuring out the season, and then the byproduct of that is recruiting. But I don't think there's any way that the recruiting calendar is just going to get turned right back on September 1 and everything's going to roll back. No, I think there's going to have to be some kind of adjustments made to the calendar moving forward. We'll see. Orange U of all wants to know, what does the defensive backboard look like? How much of a priority is adding another DB or two in this class? Austin?
I think it's a big priority. I think that, you look at the positions, Tennessee needs to add help on. Everything on offense is full except for offensive line. On defense, they'd love to add an edge pass rusher. They'd love to add quality interior defensive linemen. They'd love to add a defensive back or two, whether that's, Demarius McGee, whether that's Terrion Arnold, Nyland Green. Obviously, Tennessee threw out the offer to the kid from Los Angeles this week. They're going to keep swinging at different players. And again, I think Tennessee loves a guy like Christian Charles, who, because of COVID, has not had the chance to go and camp and blow up anywhere. And, I think that, again, distance from home, the Jeremy Pruitt's been working that one, behind the scenes for a while. So was Derek Ansley, even though he's not been here for a visit yet. I think that one's also one you got to watch.
All right, let's go to Koval, who has two questions. One, AP, tell the Under Armour All-American Game story you mentioned earlier in the week. I don't know what he's talking about. And when do you think Saban retires? Who do you think that Alabama will look at? Would Dabo be interested in that job?
He was referencing when I said the UA, and I meant not Under Armour. I wondered if somebody thought that. I was meaning since everybody calls me Uncle Austin, the ultimate Uncle Austin story, which I will tell, which is much like some of the stories you went back down memory lane, but I'll tell that later down the road once the kid graduates.
All right, let's go to the Saban. Let's go to the Saban's the question here. Hey, how much longer does anybody think he's going to go? And if you're Alabama, what direction are you going?
I think him hiring those two new strength guys, where they're like not calling themselves strength and conditioning coordinators, but performance coaches, and they both have PhDs and MDs. I think Saban's signing up for like another 5 years, and I do not see Dabo following Saban. Obviously, this would be a sore subject for Tennessee fans, but it would be also, I think, a good thing. I mean, I could absolutely see Jeremy Pruitt following in Saban's footsteps, if that would mean that Tennessee would have been successful enough that Alabama would want their son to return home. My number one candidate, though, would be Cristobal. I think that he would be the guy that I would circle right now of coaching in Alabama post Saban.
Here's the thing about the whole Pruitt Alabama thing. Do I think Jeremy's preference is to be the guy that follows Nick Saban? No, I don't. But if you got that offer, how could you turn it down? Like, unless Tennessee was just rolling to the point, like, Clemson's rolling where, like, he's built himself another Alabama over there. So, I mean, like, why would you leave necessarily to go back to Alabama unless you're just wanting to add to your legacy and all that? But for Jeremy, if it gets offered, I don't think you can necessarily turn it down, because you may not get that opportunity again. Right?
Well, it's a harder job for Dabo, though. For Jeremy, it's at least closer. You're talking about you're staying in the same conference. You're still going to be playing the same relative blue bloods each year. I mean, I could absolutely see Jeremy doing it if we're talking about 5 years down the road, but that would also mean that Tennessee would have elevated itself on a national scale for Jeremy to be considered worthy of inheriting that baton from Nick.
Yeah, and what you said about Dabo is the reason I don't think this is just, obviously, I don't know, speculating. I mean, he's just got a pathway to the football, the playoff every year, as opposed to having to deal with LSU, Auburn, Georgia, Florida. Texas A&M is a sleeping giant with all the resources they have. I mean, Clemson, the path for him to make it to the playoff every year is just I mean, it's night and day for what it's like in the SEC.
All right, let's go to Volunteered 87. What's the thought process behind pushing the football season back to the spring? It's pretty widely regarded that it's going to take 18-plus months before they have an approved vaccine with sufficient supply to distribute. It seems like either they're willing to accept some risks among the safest group in our population in the fall or not at all until there's a vaccine. I know you all aren't health experts or decision-making on this decision-making committees, but I'm wondering what rumblings and reasoning you've heard for consideration of a spring season. I'm going to look at it I'll start and I'll look at it from a financial standpoint. I said this, I think, in the chat, and I've said this to some other people. The college football business model rests greatly on ticket sales and fan attendance, much more so than the NFL. The NFL, it's a small slice of the NFL's pie compared to their TV dollars, and everything that goes into the NFL's revenue sharing, distribution things. I'm not saying ticket sales aren't important in the NFL, but they don't make up the biggest part of the pie the way they do in college football. So, I mean, I think the question is, do you have a better chance of putting fans in the stands in the spring than you do in the fall? And if so, that's a difference in some cases of, $20 million at some schools. Now, it's not as big a deal at the Chattanoogas or the Southern Conference schools, smaller scale, but at the Power 5 level, where you're trying to manage $100 million budget, that ticket attendance, those ticket sales and attendance and all the finances that come with that are significant. So I think that's one question, that is out there, is whether or not, you can play college football games. And what does your finances look like in the fall if you have no fans in the stands, or you're at less than 50% capacity, no tailgating? Basically, you park, you walk to the stadium, you go to the game, and you head to the house. All of those things are involved there. That I think the financial part of it is a big factor. Why that may be, why you wouldn't just say, okay, we're not playing this year. We're going to scrub it and start a year from now. You got to try to get it in. For the financial reasons, you might be able to make more money in the spring than possibly in the fall with the way things are trending this week. What does it look like in 10 days? I don't know, but I think that's a big part of why you're starting to hear some more about the spring possibility season, and it's all about finances.
I think if you push it to the spring, I think the NCAA would have to come in and change the scholarship number. Because I think you're inevitably going to have some guys early enrollee, and who's to say that some of these early enrollees couldn't help you in the spring? They would almost start kind of like Jarnell Stokes did when he should have been a senior in high school, and he got a year jump, on his college eligibility.
Well, you're also going to have the Trevor Lawrences and those guys probably not play.
Right.
They would be sitting out. I think to piggyback Hubbs's comments, the other side of the equation is what we've seen in the last 10 days, 2 weeks, but specifically with what happened at LSU, Clemson, Georgia, and some other spots where they've had these big spikes, is these are happening just with these athletes coming back on campus. And there is obviously a real fear of how do we control this when the entire student body population comes back. And that seems to be the biggest fear, because Tennessee's had 0 positive tests, according to Jeremy Pruitt. What is their risk factor? What are they willing to risk in terms of playing, a non-conference game against Oklahoma, who just had 10, positive tests, and and I think that's where the real decision-making and some of the issues that seem to be popping up right now, which is why we've heard more and more about a spring season. It just gives them more time. It gives them another, 6 months effectively to see how we manage it. How can we make the progress? Is there some sort of treatment that's better now or would be better then than what we have now? But that's not to say, we've brought this up before. I think there's a lot of problems with playing in the spring, which is why you saw the articles and stuff came out, I believe Wednesday or Thursday, that the SEC and Big Ten are mostly not in favor of playing in the spring, because of the financial reasons, but also because they don't want their star players sitting out. There's real fear of injury risk factors of trying to double up a season.
When you would have to start in the Big Ten, then the weather would just be nasty up there.
Yeah, but I mean, very, very true, very true. But I mean, but also just the idea of logistically trying to ask these kids who are not being paid to play twice in a year, and the injury risk there, I think is a huge deal.
I agree with that. The other side of that coin, though, Rob, is you don't balance a budget without football.
No.
If you go a calendar year without football, you don't balance your budget. We've already seen Boise State this week has eliminated a couple of sports. You're going to see that more if there's no football. You're going to see that more and more. Even at some of the higher level schools, you're going to see those things take place. So, from a business standpoint, you got to play football. But from a human standpoint, some of the things Jesse and Austin bring up are certainly viable concerns too, which is why spring
here's
is
a perfect
not ideal.
example.
What?
You go to the spring. Let's say first game in, player X tears ACL. I mean, it takes a year to get back. I mean, in a lot of ways. I mean, he can technically miss 2 years of eligibility. I mean, at that point, though, don't you think the NCAA steps in and goes, okay, you really only are missing one. We're going to grant you an extra year on the back end.
Again,
you know what I mean?
I think – go ahead, Rob. Go ahead with your point. Sorry.
My point was to agree with AD. I mean, I think if they play football this spring, you're going to see the NCAA, and not an organization I'm a huge fan of, but I do think that because of just all the craziness that's come along with COVID, I think you'd see the NCAA be really flexible when it came to things like granting extra years, maybe even doing something with scholarship numbers. But it would just – I mean, you'd have to be flexible, like we've seen with them do with the spring sports this year.
Oh yeah, no doubt. I mean, there would be some flexibility there. Again, there's the pocketbook issue here that I think is significant. I mean, we saw Oklahoma cut salaries today. If you don't play football this fall, furloughs and cut salaries are going to be rampant in all levels of football, not just at the smaller levels, but at the Power 5 levels. All those things are going to come into play as well, which is why it's hard to see. Could you make it if you went a year without football in your pockets? Because you're not going to get that money back the next year.
Yeah, that to me, Hover, is the only – I mean, it's not humanitarian to voice that opinion, but the dollar signs are the only reason right now that I really have much hope that football is going to take place this fall in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I don't disagree. All right, let's go to Uber Ball 5. Recently, y'all talked about biggest wins for Pruitt, and Wanya Morris was brought up. I've always wondered, did he have interest in Georgia, and was the interest mutual? It just seemed like I never heard them mention with him, which seems odd for a 5-star tackle and a home state school. Why were the Dogs never involved there?
Their depth chart?
He didn't have interest because of where they were, right?
Yeah, Wanya was pretty upfront about that he liked Georgia, but that he wanted to play immediately, and that path to the field was not available there, and it was available at Tennessee and Auburn. So he went on many trips to Georgia. He has spoken well to both AP and I about then Georgia O-line coach Sam Pittman, but there was just not a lot of interest there, and Georgia already had kind of their guys as well. So it worked out well for Tennessee. They got their left tackle of the future.
All right, let's go to Cutlass Dre. What does Tyus Fields need to do to see playing time outside of special teams? What happened to John Mincy? He showed some flashes his freshman year but disappeared a year ago.
Tyus Fields got to be more consistent and, understand the game from the mental side of things, and just do all the things the coaches ask him to do. I mean, they like his upside. They love his aggressiveness.
And then as for
don't you think depth happened?
He got beat out. He got beat out.
Depth improved dramatically.
But better competition there, and he got beat out for his snaps. All right, Cashfall 6. What do you think will look like at the skill positions when Tennessee goes 11 personnel? Obviously, I would figure Palmer would be one of the receivers, and either Gray or Ty Chandler at running back. But what do the other two receiver positions and tight end look like? Does Gibbs factor in? Does Johnson grab his old slot position back? Does Jacob Warren play tight end in obvious passing situations?
I think the biggest X factor is D'Angelo Gibbs. You don't know what you're getting. You don't know, is he going to be the guy that dazzled on the play on the practice field last year? working scout team. I mean, he's never played wide receiver at Georgia. He played it in high school. So I think he's the total X factor here. You could get something way above what you think, and then you may not get anything.
In terms of receivers, because of the uncertainty around D'Lo, I think Keaton's probably a safer bet to play one of those receiver spots. And then Velus Jones. I mean, AP kind of touted him a week ago. He's kind of the guy I think to pencil in early on in the slot. But he's going to have competition with Holiday and Callaway and several others. I know that they got Brandon Johnson a red shirt to come back. We'll see how much he actually factors into the rotation, especially come midseason when some of those freshmen are more primed for playing time.
Yeah, and obviously at the tight end position, opportunity abounds for whoever wants to take it. Maybe Princeton Fant's a factor there, outside of Austin Pope. Maybe it is Jacob Warren. Who knows? That's up for somebody to take, or Jim Chaney just schemes around that position with a different receiver and does something different that way. UT Sportsman 16, most underrated and overrated team in the SEC in 2020. How hot is Gus Malzahn's seat if they lose to North Carolina in week 2? And who has more sacks this season, DeAndre Johnson or Roman Harrison? Anybody want to jump in and start? Let's start with the Roman Harrison. DeAndre.
I'll go Roman Harrison.
I was too. I was going to go Roman.
I think Johnson may start stronger than Roman, but I think Roman is the more consistent player all year.
And I think Gus's seat will be thermonuclear if he loses to North Carolina. I mean, it seems like they're always looking for an excuse to get rid of him anyway, no matter if they lose a game or two. So I think that will certainly be hot.
I started to say his seat's always hot. I'm going to take DeAndre Johnson over Roman Harrison, I think, for the sacks deal. All right, Jesse, most overrated, underrated team in the SEC in 2020.
Overrated, I'm going to say Florida, only because I think they've become like the trendiest number 4 team for the playoff. And I just think that they're having to replace a lot on offense besides, Kyle Pitts is back, and I know everyone thinks that Trask is suddenly a potential like top 60 quarterback or top 60 NFL draft pick. I'm not sure I see that. But they lose all those pass catchers. P. Ryan, while they didn't run the ball effectively, he was a guy who caught a million balls. He caught like 40 balls for them a year ago. So I was clearly fairly skeptical about them as a playoff team in the preview I did for Volquest. I still think they're going to be good. I still think they're going to win 10, 11. They could win the SEC East. I'm just not sure they have the ceiling of Georgia or Alabama in the conference. Underrated, I do think Kentucky is a team that, while Tennessee probably has its number, I think Kentucky returns a heck of a lot, and they're gonna be kind of a thorn in several teams' side throughout this fall. If we play.
Yeah, and let's go to 8 Ways 24. How do you feel? This is for you, or for you, Austin. How do you feel Tennessee stands with Demarius McGee? Also, how much of a factor do you think Cody Brown will play into when it's time for Darius Mims to make his decision?
We'll start with the second question first. Cody will have a little bit of an impact. I don't think it's ever going to have a massive impact. I don't think any player is going to have a massive impact on a player like Mims. But I do think that, he's leaning on him. But, I mean, Alabama and Georgia are right there, as the top 2 teams, in my opinion. Tennessee would be like third, maybe Florida right there in that second tier. And then Demarius McGee, he hasn't been here. I think Tennessee's in the best spot they can be, considering he's never been here. And if he pulls the trigger, I'd give him a 50-50 shot at landing Demarius McGee.
All right. Hey, in East Tennessee, you need a reliable heating and air system designed for your home and our climate. You need a team that's trained and held to the highest of standards. You need solutions, not sales pitches. Many heating and air companies in East Tennessee, there's only one name you need to know. That's Blue Water Climate Control. When you need a new system or a major repair, they're not going to send out a salesperson. They're going to send out an expert to your home to tell you exactly what you need, give you all of the options available for you, including options for financing such as same as cash, even rent to own. Call them today at 865-299-2290 or visit BlueWaterClimateControl.com to make an appointment. Blue Water is an authorized dealer for American Standard Heating and Air Conditioning. That's going to wrap up this Friday edition of the Volquest Mailbag Podcast, and it's a sad wrap-up here. For the last 2+ years, our man Jesse Simonton has done unbelievable work for us. For me, he's brought such a different angle to different things on the site, analytics, breakdowns of things football wise, covering recruiting. It's just been, his insight into football has been great. His opinions on things have been spot on. They've been challenging to everybody in a very good way. But Jesse and his wife have made a move, and as he posted on the board, they are off to new adventures in New York, and Jesse's off to new adventures. And Jesse, I just wanted to say publicly on the podcast, thank you for everything that you've done. Thank you for making the Volquest family a better family, a closer-knit group. We've all gotten along so well and worked so well together. It's been a blast. And you have no idea how much you're going to be missed, not just from your production in terms of writing and insight, but just from hanging out, visiting, and road trips, and talking, and all kinds of things like that from a friendship standpoint. We'll remain friends, but obviously we're going to miss you in Knoxville. We're going to miss you every day, and just wanted to publicly say thank you for everything you've done for the site.
Little bit of a Tennessee homer, though. Little bit of a Tennessee homer.
I appreciate that, Hubs. I appreciate it. It was fun 3 seasons. AP found me sitting on the airport bench when we were covering recruiting, and kind of blossomed from there. And a lot of good memories, a lot of funny stories. AP can probably bust my balls for days about silly stuff, just like I kind of hit him back. But it's been good. And I put this in my post. Sometimes change is good. So the site will continue to grow. I think we've seen it in the 3 seasons that I've been here. I've seen, part of the reason I was excited from the standpoint when AP approached me, and then Hubs and I had the long conversation about joining Volquest, just because Volquest is kind of the foothold in the market, and there was an opportunity to kind of continue to grow and make it better. I think in the last 3 years, we've seen this site, really continue to take steps forward, and I think that's going to continue to be the case. I mean, the recruiting coverage is second to none. Rob's got the basketball beat down. And fingers crossed we get football this fall, and everybody can keep screaming at each other on the GQ.
Well, again, you're right. The site's better, and the site's better because of the insight and what you brought to the table. So best of luck. Wait a minute. Okay.
We're not letting me get out the door without saying something, Hubs.
Go ahead, AP.
All right, I'll start with the jokes and then end serious. So before we get out the door, we're going to do top 3 General's Quarters meltdown under the Jesse Simonton era. Number 3, any political post on Twitter. Number 2, Tennessee got turned down by all the quarterbacks, only to land Caden Salter. And number 1, the one that started them all, damn, Tua.
I think I could have named like 20 more than the Caden Salter one. Yeah.
Hey, listen, I just made that up 7 seconds ago.
Yeah, there you go.
So, in all seriousness, and in all the gnashing of teeth on the board from time to time, they don't really know Jesse, and they don't know that, Jesse does nothing intentional. And Jesse just, tells it the way he sees it. You may not agree with it, but he doesn't do anything to get a rise out of anybody. And so if anybody on this staff was to do something to get a rise out of people, it would be me. And because I enjoy a good troll. But at the end of the day, Jesse did a great job for us. I will miss him on the road tremendously. Now I'm dragging Hubs along every step of the way, and making him drive, making hhim go to where I want to eat because I'm such a picky eater, and he's having to endure my snoring. So, but we'll miss you. And if you ever get back in this way, if you don't like Jesse, too bad. We would love to have Jesse back at Volquest if that ever presented itself.
There's always going to be a seat at the table.
Thank you, boys.
Always going to be a seat at the Volquest table for Jesse Simonton for a visit. But obviously, if he wants to come back and ever comes back this way to be a part of the family, with open arms, he would be back as a part of the family. Jesse, we appreciate you, man. Best of luck in New York. Stay safe. God bless, and hopefully we'll be talking some football with everybody real soon.
Same to you all. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Keep killing it.
All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Volquest.com Mailbag Podcast, brought to you by Blue Water Climate Control.